Alright guys, so I am recording. I'm here in Lexington, Massachusetts. So since I'm here, I might as well take a look at this monument. So, sacred to liberty and the rights of mankind, the freedom and independence of America, sealed and defended with the blood of her sons. This monument is erected by the inhabitants of Lexington under the patronage and at the expense of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to the memory of their fellow citizens, Ensign Robert Monroe, Mess Jonas Parker, Samuel Hadley, Jonathan Harrington, Yoon, Isaac Muzzy, Caleb Harrington, and John Brown of Lexington, and Asatiel Porter of Reuben, who fell on this field, the first victims to the sword of British tyranny and oppression, on the morning of the ever memorable 19th of April in 1775. The die was cast. The blood of these martyrs in the cause of God and their country was the cement of the union of these states, then colonies, and gave the spring to the spirit, firmness, and resolution of their fellow citizens. They rose as one man to revenge their brethren's blood, and at the point of the sword to assert and defend their native rights. They nobly dared to be free. The contest was long, bloody, and affecting. Righteous heaven approved the solemn appeal. Victory crowned their arms, and the peace, liberty, and independence of the United States of America was their glorious reward. Built in the year of 1799. Alright guys, so there's another monument down here, and people apparently toss a coin there. So let's take a look. Alright, so this is all myrtle in here. It has a blue flower in the spring. It's really nice, but now it's just green. That's how it looks, guys, after it blooms. Really nice. Alright, so there was a gentleman here and I don't see him anymore. He was dressed up maybe he's only here for a certain period of time and then they leave. I don't see him anymore. So yeah, so I probably should have gone over to him first. Check that flagpole out, guys. No, I don't see him. Oh, there he is. He's up here. So we got the ninja parked over there, across the way. Oh, he's leaving. Let me see if I can catch him before he goes. So this must be some kind of monument here, you know? How you doing?
Good, good.
Hi. I just wanted to check out what you were wearing.
Oh, okay, sure.
So you're a guide?
Yes, I am.
So is this the Common, the Lexington Common?
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit of what happened here?
Oh yeah, and I'm actually telling them all about what
good.
happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, if you want to join, because
sure.
anybody can join in. Yeah, I was telling them about Captain John Parker, our leader. The leader of the Lexington Militia, and right now I'm getting ready to talk about right here where we're standing is where the original Lexington Meeting House stood. Lexington was settled in 1642. The meeting house was like the center of town, politics, town gatherings, and worship. First one was built in 1692. Nothing spectacular about it, small barn-like. so they built a bigger and better one in 1713. The year Lexington was incorporated as town. That one built in 1713 was the one standing here during the Revolutionary War. And then they built another one in 1794, and that burnt in 1846. The oldest meeting house that is still in operation today is only 20 miles south of Boston in the town of Hingham. It's called the Ship Meeting House, built in 1681. It's the oldest meeting house in America, still in operation today, as well as one of the few still standing. And later on, I'll actually be pointing out a church that's got a painting on the outside that shows you what all three meeting houses look like that once stood here. And you don't have to go inside the church to see it, because the painting's right on the outside, right near the door. Alright, you're going to follow me over here, so now let's look at these other sides. This big old rock we're now approaching is where the original belfry had stood. There's a replica of the belfry right across the street. There's a trail path you can take on the right-hand side street right next to that brick house. But as you get past these homes a little ways, right on top of the hill, you can see a little bit of the replica of the belfry. The belfry is a replica, but the bell inside is actually the original bell that actually rang out that night of April 19th of 1775 when Paul Revere had rode up from Boston to warn everybody that the regulars were coming. They did not say the British back then, because almost everybody in New England at that time was of British descent. But to give you a little insight about Paul Revere, he actually was a French Huguenot, which means French Protestant, and his name in French is pronounced Revoir. Here's a picture of Paul Revere's home in Boston. His home is actually the second oldest building in the city of Boston, built in 1680. First home Paul Revere arrived at when he came here on midnight of April 19th of 1775 was the Clark Hancock House. Clark Hancock House is right down that street straight ahead, where you see cars coming in and out of. And it's actually within walking distance of the Battle Green, about a 6 to 7 minute walk if you're interested. And two of the guests that night at the Clark Hancock House when Paul Revere arrived were Samuel Adams and John Hancock. They were both hiding out there because they had warrants up for the rest of Boston. Wait for the truck go by. And the belfry rang out at 12:30 at night right after Paul Revere left. And the next day, Samuel Adams and John Hancock left that home to go in hiding at a different home in nearby Billerica, Massachusetts the next day. But unfortunately, all that remains of that home is the remains of the foundation and a plaque that marks the spot where the home once stood, where Adams and Hancock went in hiding. Alright, before we talk about the first shot, talk a little bit of seeds of revolution. First two you probably already heard of: Boston Massacre of 1770, Boston Tea Party of 1773. Who hasn't? But there were some other events that led up to it that you may not be aware of. First was in 1772, right after the Boston Massacre, called the Gaspee Affair, where we actually burnt a British ship in the harbor in Warwick, Rhode Island. And then within less than a year of the Revolutionary War, there were many events that happened as tensions were brewing. First was September 1st of 1774, when the British wanted to raid the gunpowder house in nearby Somerville, Massachusetts. What they wanted to do there was take all the gunpowder from there. Also in Somerville, that's where Paul Revere changed horses along his midnight ride to Concord and Lexington. And if you're interested in visiting the gunpowder house today, you can actually visit it. It's at a park in Somerville called Powder House Park, right near Tufts University. Then 2 months later, in December of 1774, we took the first stand against the British, but this time it was at Fort William and Mary in Newcastle, New Hampshire, right next to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. What happened there was the British wanted to go there and take all the weapons and the gunpowder from there. So Paul Revere rode all the way up from Boston to New Hampshire to warn everybody that the regulars were coming. And we had a 2-day standoff against the British at Fort William and Mary. And what we ended up doing at Fort William and Mary is taking all the weapons from there and hiding them out in the local churches in New Hampshire, mostly in the town of Exeter. And many people have often said that it was a wonder that the Revolutionary War did not begin in New Hampshire. And then 2 months just before the Revolutionary War began, then we took another stand against the British, but this time was in February of 1775 in Salem, Massachusetts, just north of here, not that far. But the British wanted to come into Salem and actually siege weapons and stores, since Salem at the time was a rich maritime town, as well as the 6th largest community in the 13 colonies at that time. So what we did was we took a stand against the British by putting up the drawbridge that goes through the center of town where the North River flows, which prevented the British from coming in and sieging weapons and stores in Salem. And also in Salem, that's where the Patriots gathered for the first time 2 months before the Revolutionary War, which was at the London Coffee House. The London Coffee House has been restored to its originality, but today is actually a sandwich shop. Alright, if you want to follow me out here, so that was the first shot. The British arrived on April 18th, 1775. 700 of them had gathered at the Boston Common. The Boston Common is the oldest common ground in America today. They arrived around 10:30 at night, and not too long afterwards is when Paul Revere began his midnight ride as we know it. The British started their march at 12 midnight. 700 of them came marching up Massachusetts Avenue. They had to cross over the Charles River, where the present-day Boston-Cambridge Bridge now stands, separating the two cities in order to get here. And Paul Revere himself actually had to take an alternate route. That was through the Charlestown area of Boston and through the Metro West suburbs of Somerville and Medford in order to get here. And along the way, he was accompanied by two men named Dawes and Prescott. And if you're interested in picking up the map ride of Paul Revere, you can do so right across the street at the Buckman Tavern. And also at the Buckman Tavern that night, that was where Captain John Parker over there met with 130 of his Lexington militia right across the street to discuss their plans. One of the things that was discussed at the Buckman Tavern was do not fire unless fired upon. Also at the Buckman Tavern, that was where John Hancock actually hid out his Provincial Papers Act. The Provincial Papers was referred to as the incriminating papers because of all the signatures that were on there. And at 4 a.m. that same morning, Paul Revere and another man actually went back to the Buckman Tavern to get the papers out, which were hidden out the trunk. And just in the nick of time, the British arrived here at 5 a.m. and they were met by 77 Lexington militia that stood right where that rock is. As the British arrived here at 5 a.m., Major Pitcairn, the leader of the British Army, said, "Drop your weapons and disperse, and lay your arms down, or you're all dead men." Around that time, as blows had been exchanged, myth and legend is a man named Sullivan Brown was hiding out behind a stone wall around the Buckman Tavern when his gun misfired up in the air. That misfire heard around the world was enough for the British to open fire on the Americans, which they did, right where that flagpole now stands. And when Captain John Parker realized how greatly outnumbered he was, 77 to 700, he actually told his men to take cover and to retreat. But sadly, when the smoke had cleared, 8 Americans were killed here on the green. 10 were wounded. There were no British casualties at all here on the green. Only one British officer gets wounded. The first person that actually was hit and wounded was a man named Prince Estabrook. Prince Estabrook was a slave trying to get his freedom papers. He received a bullet wound to the shoulder. I'll tell you about some of the other casualties. One of the casualties was a man just passing by from the nearby town of Woburn who died in the street here. Another man named Jonathan Harrington got mortally wounded on the green. He managed to make it to the front steps of his home right there where he died in front of his wife. After that, the British then began their march up to Concord, which was the original plan. Go to Concord and siege weapons up at the depot. They arrived there around 7 a.m. Much to their disappointment, all the weapons had been moved to various different locations throughout the area as they continued searching. And at 9 a.m. that same morning, 400 militiamen and Minutemen from all these surrounding towns here had gathered up at the North Bridge. At 9:30 a.m. that same morning, we had a battle with the British at the North Bridge. But unlike here where they were instructed to not fire unless fired upon, at the North Bridge, our major up there, Major Budrick, actually said, "For God's sakes, fire back!" And at the North Bridge, the first British casualty fell. 3 British killed, 9 British wounded, only 2 Americans killed, 4 Americans wounded. Killed at the North Bridge was Isaac Davis, one of the original leaders and founders of the Minutemen. He died instantly from a bullet to the heart. He was an active Minuteman. If you go to the town of Acton today, right in the center of town, they actually got a monument in memory of Isaac Davis. And also at the North Bridge, there's a statue of Isaac Davis there as well. And also at the North Bridge. What's that?
How do we get to the
Oh, about a 10-minute drive. Head down this street right here. Yeah. And second set of lights when you come to a T, and you want to go right or left, take a right, and you'll see signs in the Concord Center and to the Minuteman Park and all that. It's very well marked.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also at the North Bridge, that's actually where we proved to the British that we had a great army. And that's when the British then began their retreat back to Boston, where they came across heavy gunfire all along the way here, known as the Minuteman Trail. The next battle off the North Bridge took place at Merriam's Corner in Concord. By then it was guerrilla warfare, and our militia rose to 1,100 men, and there was many casualties as well at Merriam's Corner in Concord. The next battle after that took place at Bloody Angle, Lincoln. Lincoln's between Concord and Lexington. What happened at Bloody Angle is we set a fire that kind of backfired on us because there was many casualties as well at Bloody Angle, Lincoln. The next battle after that took place on the Lexington-Lincoln line called Parker's Revenge, where Captain John Parker over there had another battle with the British on the Lexington-Lincoln line. The next battle that took place at Fisk Hill in Lexington. Fisk Hill is just before the Minuteman Visitor Center. And right after the battle at Fisk Hill, a couple of our soldiers got treated for their wounds right across the street at the Buckman Tavern, where one of them died 3 days later of his wounds. And around that same time at Monroe Tavern, just a mile and a half down the street going this way, the British set up headquarters for an hour there to treat their wounded. And as the British get retreating back to Boston, the next battle after that took place at Menotomy, present-day Arlington. Back then, Menotomy was just a village. It was not an incorporated town, and I called it the Unknown Battle because part of that battle took place around the Jason Russell House. And what happened there was Jason Russell himself, a 58-year-old man who walked with a limp and a cane, was outside trying to guard his property as some American soldiers came running towards it in a state of panic.
In Arlington?
Yep.
Okay.
And what happened there was 12 men were killed around the Jason Russell house, including Jason Russell himself. And when the British were done with all 12 men, they piled them up and put them inside the house. And at 5:30 at night that same day of April 19th, 1775, when Jason Russell's wife returned home, she was the one who discovered her husband along with 11 other men laying in a pool of blood inside the house. And also, if you go to Jason Russell's home today, not that far from down the street from there, there's a marker that marks the spot where the oldest member of the militia, 80-year-old Samuel Whittemore, was shot and left for dead. Samuel Whittemore ended up living to be 98 years old. Also at the Battle of Menotomy, present-day Arlington, that's where the most casualties were during the Battle of Concord and Lexington. At that one battle alone, 25 Americans were killed along with 40 British. And also the other part of that battle took place in the present-day Arlington Heights area, which today is all built up. And not far from the Jason Russell home too is a burial ground where all 25 men are buried at, right in the center of it. And also as the British kept retreating back to Boston, they came across some gunfire on the way in Cambridge until they sought safety that night in Boston. When the Battle of Concord and Lexington ended, the total number of casualties was 90 Americans and 269 British were killed. 2 months later, on June of 1775, we had the Battle of Bunker Hill and Braid Hill, Boston, which had 450 American casualties there, 1,500 British casualties there. One of the British casualties at the Battle of Bunker Hill was actually Major Pitcairn, the leader of the British Army during the Battle of Concord and Lexington. He was killed there. And the Battle of Bunker Hill was considered one of the bloodiest battles of the Revolutionary War, along with the Battle of Brandywine in Pennsylvania and the Battle of the Forts in Highland Falls in upstate New York, right on the Hudson. And the longest running battle of the Revolutionary War was at the Battle of Monmouth in New Jersey. And everybody knows about the Bunker Hill Monument, but there's also the Evacuation Monument you can visit in Boston as well. That stands right where we took that stand against the British when they evacuated that winter of 1776 in the Dorchester Heights area.